What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Brian Costa. And today, guys, I have a fantastic episode in store for you guys. Joining me on the show today is a face that you've seen many times before. He's appeared on this show starting back in the summer of this year. And as we close out 2021, I did want to get him on once again as we're finishing things off here in the year. And what a year it's been for both myself and this individual in general. He has had a tremendous amount of growth on TikTok and many other platforms so far this year. And, you know, we've had some amazing conversations on this show. So without any further ado, welcome back to the show, my colleague from Canada, Mr. Joel LaFlamme, aka Hey Kami. Joel, welcome back to the show, man.
Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing amazing. I'm glad to be back home, enjoying the winter break. Long semester. Glad it's over. I love the people down at school. I'm gonna miss them for the month that I'm away from them, but it's a good break. It's a good change in scenery to be back home doing my thing, and I'm excited for the opportunities this break has in store for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you everything okay in Boston? Because I know things, at least up here, they're I think they're shutting down and making it so it's like 10 people for Christmas. So
Yeah, I mean, right now, Boston says they're going to implement some stuff regarding COVID in the middle of January. So it doesn't even make sense that they're not doing it in terms by the holiday season. It's a little weird. They're really not even implementing anything until January 15th, which I'm kind of like I find a little odd, but luckily for me, I live far enough outside of Boston that I really don't have to deal with all that crap. I live about 45 minutes to an hour outside the city, so I'm kind of just in the suburbs enjoying life in rural Sutton, Massachusetts. It's a nice little vibe out here.
that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's fairly nice. I enjoy it. It's just good to not have to be in the thick of it right now. I did go into the city though. Fairly recently, I went in to catch a Celtics game with my co-host now, Tyler Stringfellow. We went in, watched the C's beat the 76ers. It was a fun game to be there. We got to go open the box and enjoy that. So that was a ton of fun.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And
It's I was gonna say we're not really able to enjoy it. We've got one hockey team here, the Edmonton Oilers. That's our main
yeah.
sports team, and that's not really happening right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know. Maybe it'll get up and going again soon, so we can I can enjoy it over the because that's really Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl when it comes to
Yeah.
pro athletes. I've got them.
Yeah.
I've got them to watch.
Listen, you got to enjoy McJesus while you have him. I mean, listen, he's an incredible talent. So I hope that you can get back out to watch him sooner rather than later. But man, you've had an incredible year for yourself, both on this platform and off of it as well. I mean, I've talked to you at length about movies that you're interested in doing. Obviously, a biopic on Tommy John, as well as a potential horror film that is in the works with you. But one of the things that I'm really impressed with is the amount of growth that you've had on TikTok this year. You've amassed an amazing amount of followers, and you've also had some incredible content throughout the year. I was watching some of your videos and I saw, your number one video of the year talking about the stolen lineup card or strategy card from the Toronto Blue Jays ended up garnering, I believe it was around 4 million views on TikTok. Yeah.
It's funny that that was just a random video. I was watching that game live. I threw it up and it was like a 15-second video that got 4 million views. It wasn't really comparable newsworthy wise to the other stuff that I had done, but yeah, for some reason that one just went off. Yeah, went to the moon.
I mean, it was an incredible thing to see because I was shocked at how much it blew up and then what it turned into a couple days later when those teams kind of got into it down the stretch. There were also some things that we kind of collaborated with down the stretch that I haven't been able to talk about with you on air since we did it. One of those things was when I was actually working over at my job on campus. I work in the athletic communications department. And I basically will either develop schedules. I'll do little things here and there on the computer. And because you're just sitting there for 2 hours, you kind of have to have a little something in your ear. So I was just flipping back and back and forth between the Pat McAfee show, some Boston sports talk radio. And I was like, all right, I'll throw in like Felger and Maz for a second. And I'm listening to them. And all of a sudden I hear them say, oh, we have this TikToker guy that we're going to play him. And I start hearing your voice. And they end up saying, oh, this guy, it's John Boy Media. I'm like, that is not John Boy Media. I was like, I know who exactly this is. And I remember I immediately text you. I'm just like, hey, you're on the radio right now. You were like, what do you mean?
Yeah, and I ended up calling them like within a couple of minutes and was on the air
it was within like 5 minutes.
or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was insane. And it was funny because they called me John Boy, and they're like, who's this guy? John Boy. Yeah, John Boy, whatever. John Boy.
Yeah.
John Boy. I don't think he's John. And then they were like John and John. They were saying them both. And then they're like, he's a John Boy knockoff. That's what he is. That's the amount of they caught themselves not knowing my name, and they remedied it by calling me a knockoff. And I was like, oh, thanks, that's so much better.
Oh yeah, no, I should have given you fair warning before going on that those guys are just kind of known for being kind of shock jock a-holes on the air. So
it's all good.
I should have given you some fair warning with that. I think even once they had you on the air, I think they actually called you Hey Tommy. I was like, no. Yeah. I was like, man, I mean, you're in the ballpark, but nah.
Yeah, and they were like running some really like passionate material off of my TikTok videos. Like that's literally all the ammunition that they had to say that like Houston is cheating again. They haven't stopped. They're diabolical. Something stinks. Something is rotten in Denmark. They were like they're really really like they did an entire 20-minute segment, it seemed like, on that.
Oh, it was they made it like one of their 4-hour shows that day. It was insane. Yeah. I was like, oh my God. Oh.
Yeah, and I called in and they're like, oh, that's the state of baseball these days. Your modern baseball fan is out in some cow pasture in Canada analyzing spin rates. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I guess that's fair enough.
I was like, oh my God. But man, that was funny when that went down. I was just flipping between like radio stations, and all of a sudden I hear this. I'm like, wait a minute. I was like, this is a familiar voice. I was like, wait a minute. So like, as soon as I pulled this up, I was like, you got to be joking. And it was that was something very funny that I got to go over with you. And unfortunately, it's been a bit of time since we've been able to talk on this show, but I'm glad that we are able to get back into things now. And listen, man, obviously you were kind of known when I originally spoke with you. It was about the foreign substance scandal that came out. And there's something kind of now trickling off of this. And it kind of has to do with we were talking about stuff that pitchers were putting on their fingers to affect the baseball. Now we're talking about the baseballs themselves. And this is something that you talked about on your channel. And it's the fact that MLB is now being accused of using 2 different baseballs throughout the course of this year. And I'll let you kind of take the reins with this.
Well, man, it goes back. I'm trying to do the abridged version of it because it goes back 100 plus years to Spalding and Albert Goodwill Spalding. He baseball player, pitcher who ran a sporting goods store, made the first big sporting goods store, and pretty much made the first baseball, the first rules for baseball, the first glove, just a real like staple in the game. And then in the mid 70s, they switched to Rawlings off of Spalding. They moved to Rawlings. And then in 2018, I believe, they purchased Rawlings so they could pretty much own their means of production. And then in the 2019 season, the juiced balls came out, and the juiced balls, like they hit. I was bringing this up before, but they hit in the peak of the steroid era. They hit the most that was ever hit was 5,600 home runs in 2000. They hit 5,693, I believe that was the number in 2000. In 2019, under their first run under being owned by Major League Baseball, the Rawlings being owned by Major League Baseball, they hit 6,700 home runs, which was 1,000, I believe, 1,200 more than the all-time record. It was up 13% from the highest year of the steroid era. So 13% worse than, the biggest juiced up players you could ever
That's crazy.
conceive. And by augmenting the ball, centering the pill, making it harder, cutting down the seam height, they made the ball just explode off the bat. And 2019 is like, that was a year Glaber went off and hit just a ton of home runs, and Bellinger had an insane year. And it's just like, you can't really look at those seasons as that's like if they were on steroids.
Yeah,
It's like the entire league was on steroids, and you saw some just inflated numbers. Like, no offense to Pete Alonso, he had 53. Right? He doesn't seem like a 53 home run guy right now. He hasn't had any health issues. That seems to have gone away, right? Because he was very good at hitting that ball to the warning track. And it's a warning track. Like, it's the funny thing about it is that it's an out that goes not for an out but for a home run. It bypasses everything and goes right to the most valuable outcome, right? It's like, it's not a base hit, it's not a double, it's not a triple. It's goes from being in play and like this to going over the fence, and it's now a home run. And absolute mediocrity or failure now becomes success. And you like, I don't know if you remember 2019, but there were home runs that as a fan you were like, no way that goes out. And then it goes out by a good chunk, and you're just like,
I'd have to think back on it, but there would be times within the past 2 years where I've watched a baseball game and I've seen what was going down, and it really just, like, you'd see, like, there are typical times where as a baseball fan, you can see, like, you'll bring your friends to the ballpark that don't really watch baseball a ton, and like some guy will just like really get under one and put it in the air, and you can tell which fans are baseball fans versus which aren't, depending on who gets out of their seat and excitement for it, because some guys will get under it and everyone will be like, oh, it's going, but the people that have seen baseball and understand how a ball usually flies will go, okay, no, that thing's going to be about 20 feet short, or you have an idea of where it's going to land. As a baseball fan who's watched baseball now for the past 20 years and has understood, how a ball is usually supposed to fly, during these past couple of years, there have been some balls in play where I've seen a hit and I'm like, oh, that thing's going to be well short, and it clears the wall by 20, 30 feet.
Yeah.
It boggles the mind.
It does. And it's, because like I said, it's taking what should be an out and it's making it the best possible outcome in the game.
Absolutely.
And it depending on how many runners on, it's a ball that would be, compare the situation to 2 outs, runners on second and third, deep fly ball that's easily caught, as opposed to 3-run home run that takes you out of the game, completely changes the dynamic of the game. The game is probably over. That's 3 runs. That's a massive blow. A 3-run home run usually
that's the dagger.
Yeah. And the fact that that's happening on balls that, like, so the issue with this year was that Major League Baseball was using 2 different kinds of balls. Okay. So one game would have either the balls that meet the standards, they're weighted properly, and then they're the heavier balls that don't meet the current updated standards, and those for some reason were also in play. Okay. And now they said that the issue was that Rawlings was unable to keep up with the production, but Dr. Meredith Wills, the doctor who had chopped open the balls and done the studies over the course of the year, she had figured out that balls were being manufactured after, like, during the course of the season, when they knew that they were out of balls, they manufactured more balls up to the incorrect standards.
One of the things
which makes no sense to me.
One of the things I had heard was they were using balls from both, like, and these standards had changed within the course of a year. They were using balls both from the 2021 season and from the 2020 season for this year's production of baseballs.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, I'm just, to me, the balls that are, once again, you can see the difference between the ball that, like, John Boy did a good video where they were comparing balls hit at the same launch angle, same
Yes.
velocity, and you could 30 feet difference in a ball that lands well short of the wall, even short of the outfielder, and then it goes over, and you're like, that's nuts that it's that drastic.
Yeah.
And it's the same launch angle, it's the same exit velocity. And what's wild is that betting obviously is weird, that you go into a game and it's like you expect one standard, and the amount of home runs that were hit this year were what, 59, nearly 6,000.
Okay.
So it was like top 3, top 4, but that to me seems like, it seems like a normal year would be in the 53, 5,400 range. Okay. An incredibly inflated year is 6,500. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I see 59, that tells me that it was a year of half juiced balls and half regular balls, because it sits in that like really big production year for home runs. And you had to deal with foreign substance for a big chunk of the year, right? The first 2 months of the season, offense was really, really, really down. So the fact that, I don't know, they still got to a pretty solid home run number, and the first 2 months of the year were not good when it came to any type of offense. It's interesting because, once again, Major League Baseball has control. They enforced the rules come mid-June for foreign substance. And then it was almost like, I don't know if you looked at the graph, but the balls that were sampled in July and especially in August seemed to shift up in weight. And
Yes.
up more weight meant more distance. You think that more weight doesn't mean more distance? It's like, for this, it did. Like for the centered pill, like the more weight would create more exit velocity off the bat.
And for people at home that maybe don't understand like the specific nuances of a baseball, when you say the centered pill, you mean?
Oh, well, see, before, like, it used to be a hand woven, like a baseball was like a corked center,
Yes.
right? But now the center of it is much denser, and it's machine wound.
Okay.
So the winding process makes the ball that much tighter, that much livelier. And then what they also did was they lowered, I don't know the exact measurements on the seam length, but the seams are smaller, so there's less potential for, well, for grip, and obviously picking up any type of spin and braking. You know, that's the seams help grab the air and rotate the ball and create break.
Yeah.
So pretty much those elements were drastically, like, kind of, they tweaked kind of all of them in 2019, and you just had such an explosion of offense.
Yeah.
And now you can tell that they're trying to tweak it back down to a proper amount, but the fact that they were letting balls into play and manufacturing balls that weren't up to the standards over the course of the year, and it just comes down to a luck of the draw type thing. Like, what if you're a pitcher who just sheer luck had 65% of the time you threw, you had loaded balls?
Yeah.
You know, whereas a pitcher, another guy, 65% of the time he had the lighter balls, you know? So it came down to a luck of the draw for a lot of players. And it's just like, if I was a pitcher, I'd be like, I want to know what balls I was throwing with. I want to know if those days I was getting blown up, or certain home runs that I gave up, what ball was being used, because that might not be my fault. I might be banging my head against the wall for something that I didn't even do wrong. So.
Yeah. One of the things I was seeing with that for, maybe guys not having really control of their own destiny. And I saw one person talk about this. I think you may have as well. And it was that these balls, depending on what type of a game was going on, one type of ball would be sent to another stadium depending on the other. Like, let's take just a garbage matchup, like say the Diamondbacks and the Marlins. They would get the ball that maybe isn't as lively and wouldn't really produce the biggest outcomes. But then you could take a really high stakes televised game like the Field of Dreams game with the Yankees and the White Sox, and they would get the baseball, like the type of baseball that was made to just jump off the bat, which it did in that game. So do you know anything kind of behind that, and what are your and I'll let you take it from there.
Well, that's got to be some type of collusion there.
Yeah.
Like that's you think about back in the 80s when the owners like colluded not to pay free agency, but I believe through 85 and 86, 87, and they got caught doing that. Like the fact that they own the means of production for the baseball.
Yeah.
They own the company that makes the baseballs.
Mhm.
And in the 4 years that they've owned the company that makes the baseballs, they have drastically altered the baseballs
Yeah.
many times. Pretty much every year they've drastically altered the ball, which has made pitchers just go like, what do we do? That's like, I covered all the foreign substance stuff, but I'm very sympathetic towards pitchers and having to use different ball from year to year. And it's like, if you're gonna drastically affect the interior of the ball and the seams, and you're gonna change it, then I'll put stuff on my fingers to get back that competitive edge that you seem to have taken away from me, and I don't want to say that all that foreign substance stuff was good, but it's just like, I can definitely understand why they resorted to it, because also it was a different sport.
Absolutely.
It was a different sport. One crazy number is that 6,700 home runs in 2019. In 2014, there were 4,100 home runs.
Wow.
2,500 home run difference.
Just up
So
here.
40% more home runs. That's just 5 years later. Over the course of 5 years, the sport was a different game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, so in the course of 4 years of MLB owning Rawlings, you've seen them drastically change the balls and be unable to keep up to the baseball requirements of having enough baseballs. They failed on that. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't have enough baseballs this year. It's just like, you've been at it for 4 years. I don't know if that's ever happened any other year. I get it. It's COVID, but it's also you guys changing the ball. If you didn't change the balls in the first place, you wouldn't have any ball issues.
Yeah, it would just be like, all right, we can just go to the old stock of baseballs because it's the same thing. But when you have a different ball for 2018, 19, 2021, it makes it you could literally be throwing a football out there to those guys, just depending on what it is. I'll say for this point, for people who are maybe watching this who don't really, maybe haven't played baseball all that much, or don't have a general idea of the feel of a baseball. I just have a baseball right here. And, for someone who's played for a good amount of time, I wasn't a pitcher or anything. I was an outfielder, but for someone who's played for a long time, you have a general idea of a feel of how a baseball should feel in your hands. There should be a way that it should come off and should feel when you're throwing it and when you're holding it. And it can, sometimes that can change depending on the way the ball is made. It can, if the ball was maybe waterlogged at some point, you can have an idea of that. And it's just, it's, something that you can just have an idea of. And when that gets altered, it does become like a different game. Cause I mean, I don't know how many times this ever happened to you, but you'd be playing in a game and someone would toss you a ball and you'd be like, this thing's freaking waterlogged. They'd be like, no, I can't throw with this thing. I'll throw my arm out.
Oh yeah. And I don't like, I'm trying to see where you're like, okay, so this is like a not legitimate baseball right here. This is like a hokey,
okay, yeah,
like it's a Rawlings ball, but it's not an official major league ball. It's just something that you would go use for fun. And you can feel that the seams are much lower right there. It's like there isn't. And then on this one right here, which is official, this is just really an old ball right here.
Yeah.
But the seams, even though this thing is like 45, 50 years old, the seams are so prominent on it.
Yeah.
Like I have such a nice grip on this because the seams are just popping on it. And that's drastic difference. That's like drastically different. I didn't think the size is different on these two balls, but like, and when you listen to pitchers, they talk about now how it's like they feel like they're picking up a cue ball. They're picking up a cue ball off a pool table. So like I like I said, I'm sympathetic for coming to work and your equipment's different, and it's different again. It's different again.
Every single year for the past 4 years. it like, how do you work like that?
Yeah, and like I don't know if that has to do with. I would assume that it partially has to do with why we're in a lockout.
Yeah.
Like new things have to be bargained, and here's something to think about. In 2005, when Senate stepped in and they did the Mitchell report, and they had to clean up baseball. They to end the season, they gave like a 10-game suspension with pay. I think it was the same thing that they did with foreign substance.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think that they would have to? And then in the following CBA, they negotiated the 3 strikes you're out, 50, 100, and then
Life.
banned. Yeah. Wouldn't you think that that would be the same for foreign substance? Right? Like that's is that being bargained right now?
From what I can tell, the majority, unfortunately, while a lot of people thought that this lockout would have to do a lot with changes to the game on the field, and some which could be good, some which could be bad. From what I've been hearing, a lot of this is just money. Which which here's the thing, as you know, to kind of transition over into the lockout, for someone who watches baseball, you can tell that there are some players who probably need to get paid more. Obviously, the minor leaguers who make pennies on the dollar, should be getting, at least something that they can live by, and like a legitimate living wage, because these guys are, basically living on buses for years in the minors. Some of them never even make to the major leagues, and when they're done, they essentially are just kind of homeless and don't really have a job most of the time. So it's a very difficult gig, but unfortunately, the guys that are really negotiating on their behalf are guys like Max Scherzer, who is a part of the MLB Players Union, which is ridiculous because the fact that there's a guy in a union who's making about $43 million and is trying to bargain for money, it just doesn't really sit right. I mean, I had one of my buddies talk to me about that, and he was just saying like that just kind of doesn't really feel right, that a guy that's making that much money is trying to, be bargaining for
6 tax brackets away from me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm down here making 600 a month, and
yeah.
Who's okay? So here's a question: out of per year, okay, out of all the money that comes from teams and the teams spend, who makes the most? Who's making the most right now?
I mean, Scherzer's making the most money, but like, what are you talking about in terms of who?
It's Scott Boras.
Oh yeah.
Right. Scott Boras makes more than Mike Trout per year. He makes more than Max Scherzer per year.
Yep.
There's a man who makes more out of Major League Baseball salaries that are put out there than any player, ever will. He doesn't play. He sits down in a room with he sits down in Texas and goes, "How much you want to give this guy Corey Seager to play for you?"
Yeah.
How much? Because they're going to pay him. Toronto offered him 7 years, 30 million a year. Are you going to take it to 10? Like what is you're a used car salesman. I don't want to say Carl. You're a used car salesman, but you're not selling a used car. You're selling prime
top of the line talent.
And we're in a sport where we're so analytically inclined that the analytics do the job.
Yeah.
The analytics do the job. And don't get me wrong, Boras must have done some amazing work in Texas, because Corey Seager's not I watched a bunch of analytics videos that are like, this is an amazing signing. This is just this guy is a 140 WRC plus guy, and he is great. And I'm like,
my brain is melting.
I'm like, this guy's played 65% of the games that he could have played. 65%. So at best, he's 65% of that WRC plus. Somebody else has to fill in the other 35%, and that's his 20s. That was his 20s. For 6 seasons, he's played 1 full year.
Yeah.
The most home runs he's hit is 26. The most RBIs he has is 82. Okay, he has 1 year where he scored 100 runs. That is on the Los Angeles Dodgers that were a division winner every single year, top team, top offense. That's what he was putting up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's not a $300 million player.
Yeah.
That's not a $300 million player. He's played 1 year. Okay. Bichette in Toronto, his 820 OPS year devours any year that Corey Seager's ever had.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're like, no, he had a 970 OPS. The guy plays 120 games. You don't know when he's going to miss the 42.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the end of the year. And then the people go, oh no, he's an incredible postseason player. He's got a 770 OPS in the postseason. 1 good year in the postseason. And everybody thinks he's a god. He had 1 good year. 1 good year. And you're like, that's so I don't know. I was talking bad about Boris, but obviously he did something right to get that guy $300 million.
No, absolutely. Whatever Scott Boras is able to do, it's that thing is a talent.
Yeah,
it is
like but he gets 5% of Mike Trout's 430 million. He gets 5% of Corey Seager's 325 million, 5% of Garrett Cole, 5% of whatever Juan Soto signs for.
No, it's crazy. And I mean, and unfortunately, the money just being thrown around like this, it is what I think drives a lot of fans, more common fans rather, away from the game, because there are people going, obviously money is huge in every sport. You're never going to be able to get back to the days of oh, guys just playing for the love of the game. I'm not saying like obviously there are guys playing for money. That's a very obvious thing. But one of my professors this year, his name's Mike Montecavo. He's actually a broadcaster down on the in the local news in Rhode Island, and he talked a bunch about, for some reason, no matter what it is, when you're interviewing baseball players or guys at the higher level, for some reason, the only thing that they ever want to talk about is money. That's the only thing that's ever usually on their mind for a lot of guys, unfortunately. And while it's a thing in the NBA for sure, definitely in the NFL, whatever it is with baseball guys, money is like always the number one thing, and anything that can jeopardize it will turn them into like heathens.
Yeah. See, it's just like, it makes me, money is such an aspect of the game because we don't have a salary cap.
Yeah.
And some teams can go off and spend whatever they want to spend. And some teams can pretend to be those big spenders and do it. And they have to hit, because they can't just do that every year. Like the Red Sox can pull the trigger on a big contract pretty much every year. Yeah. The Yankees can too. But like, if you're like, Texas went for it with Simeon and Seager, and it's like, they can't do that again next year, and then the year after that, and just hopefully it works. Like, they made a wild stab there.
You hope they can do something like that again in 4 years, and that's like the long run. That's like the short term of it.
Yeah, of that big of those big of a signings. Yeah, that's just shifting insane amount. But the thing is that you are your production and your the amount of money that you cost. You're those things. If like, people don't think that the amount of money that you get paid, it's like, it doesn't matter. He's a great player. He gets a lot of money, but that money is your team's ability to make moves and to be able to pick up players. And when you look at Acuna, I don't think he needs any more money. Right? Like, he signed a joke contract that pays him $100 million till he's like 31, 32 years old. He got grossly screwed.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think he thinks he's grossly screwed.
No.
He comes from a poor upbringing. They put $100 million in front of him, and he's like, I got paid $100 million to play baseball.
He's like, how can I turn that down?
You don't even understand that when you're coming from those type of like financial origins. You're coming from like a third world country to the United States, and they put $100 million, and it's just like, and guess what? We're going to have the freedom that if you get hurt, we'll be able to go get Soler, Jock Peterson, Duvall, Eddie Rosario to fill your gap and win a World Series with you out.
Yeah.
Like so he's happy. That guy's got a smile on his face all the time. Him and Ozzy Albies are just running around smiling. They get to play baseball. They're millionaires, and now they have World Series rings, and it just makes me think. I'm like, like we go there to see the player. You go there to see the player. The money should go to the player, but it really creates a separation between the fan and the ball player when they've got $500 million. They got a third. You're comparing it to fractions of $1 billion. You're like, he's got 2/3 of $1 billion. Like, what? How?
It's like that shouldn't
Manny
even
Machado and Tatis make $650 million.
It's like how is that even possible? But it is crazy just to think about. And while this lockout still has me nervous, because until the lockout's over, you don't know what the situation of it is going to be, and we really have no idea where this thing is going to go. But some of the things that I've been seeing during the course of this lockout have had me not so hopeful at times, and other things have had me more hopeful at times. To kind of stay on the positive, I mean, it's a little frustrating to see, because it seems like MLB is always like maybe going against the rules, but this could also maybe be a sign that maybe the lockout is closer to being over than we could assume. And it's because there's a lot of moves that are happening during this lockout where you think that where you thought, when I heard that there's a lockout, I saw a video of it saying, all right, all trades, free agent signings, everything involving players in their teams freezes and nothing can get done. And that's
MLB site is blacked out on faces.
They're all faces are blacked out. And that was the general understanding that I had of, okay, this is what a lockout is. You can't, like, the players and the team, they don't own the likeness to each other. That's the understanding. From what I've heard, MLB Network for I don't know what the case is now, but when it initially happened, they weren't able to show current highlights of players because they don't own the rights to that right now. And there are certain things that go on with that. So I was looking into it, and there have been two big moves that I've seen happen, which are kind of shocking to me, and I thought couldn't happen during this type of lockout. And the first thing I saw it was Justin Verlander. He initially signed a contract with the Astros. I believe it was, right before the lockout. He's 38, gonna be 39 next year. And he signed a 1-year deal. I think it was like maybe for 25 or 20 something million.
With an option for next year.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, you have that option. You have all that stuff getting worked in. And then the lockout happened. And it was like, okay, like whatever happens. And just a couple weeks ago, we're hearing, okay, oh, hey, that contract with Verlander had just got finalized. And I'm like, how does something get finalized during a lockout? I thought you weren't technically allowed to speak with these guys. And then another move I saw was Buck Showalter just got signed by the Mets after it came up that Max Scherzer was in favor of the Mets signing a guy like that. And I thought no managers could be signed. I thought nothing like this could happen. So I'm just confused about this just as much as you, but I'll throw it off to you for your thoughts on this.
It confuses me because it's just like you said, the fact that they're able to, Buck. I think we had mentioned that it probably has something to do with management is okay, and they're able to make managerial moves. They obviously seem confident enough in signing someone for he got signed for the 2022 season to be the manager of the Mets. Is that's a guaranteed contract if they don't play? Right? Obviously you feel confident enough in hiring someone that you will have to, pay throughout a strike. But it's the fact that they couldn't get, I don't know what the issue is, why you're not able to sit Tony Clark and Manfred and why they're not able to. What are you guys doing up to these due dates? You're in school. If you got a date to get something done, you get it done or you get punished.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like the people who are in control are getting punished for failing at things that need to be done, because it's not like there's positives in what needs to be negotiated, but that needs to be negotiated before a black eye is thrown onto the game for no reason.
Yeah.
It's just like we just settle this stuff. You have all of this time, sit down, get it done. And then when you go to a lockout, now you have lockout to strike date, right? Yeah. And it's just,
wait, when's the lockout to strike date?
Well, they start showing up February 25th.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So strike date would be if they don't get anything and you're suffering from them not being able to show up to work. Right.
Yeah.
So they're locked out from being able to train or do anything like that. But it has it's twice as bad when it's actual games that are being missed and stuff like that. They can go home and train. It's not to the same standards of everything, right?
But you can still do it. Yeah,
you can still do it. The only something is being lost out, but
yeah,
like what's really going to be lost is spring training and then eventually regular season games and pushing the season back and trying to make 140 game, 120 game, 100 game season. We already had a 60 game season, so they're like, hey, we just had a 60 game season, it's okay if that ends up happening again. No, like get this done now. Like
actually no, it's kind of not okay if that happens again, because I mean, MLB, when it came to COVID, they had a chance to revitalize their sport to an entire new market, because every single thing was shut down. The NFL lucked out because it happened right after the Super Bowl and they had an entire offseason to figure things out. But the NBA was shut down. The NHL was shut down. Every single major sporting event, I think, besides the UFC, which is pay-per-view, was shut down.
They made their island. Yeah,
exactly. They made their island. They made their, special thing off that. But everything besides that was shut down. And people were saying, hey, the MLB might have a shot here to really revitalize themselves and come back. I mean, I remember the Korean baseball league, the KBO, was having like some success with just some kind of like, beer league pitchers kind of just walking out there and doing their thing. So I was like, oh, wow, this could actually be something. But the MLB, it was like, oh shoot, if these guys could come back maybe in June or maybe May, June, July, they could, capture a new audience and maybe, reignite America's pastime and do some stuff like that. And it was like, oh wow, they have a real shot at this. And instead there was bargaining troubles, there was player disputes. And what did it turn into? It turned into we still managed to, I think, start, we either started, actually, I think the NBA managed to start, they still managed to start before us, like just before us, because of all of it.
Yeah, they played the NHL and NBA played those like
play-in those like
tournaments. Yeah.
And they managed to technically, I think, start before us. And I was like, you had the perfect opportunity to get something started. Obviously, fans weren't going to be a part of that. There were obviously going to be difficulties, but MLB had a shot in 2020 to get things going. And the fact that they're going to try to shorten a season again, like within 2 years too of a pandemic shortened season, it's embarrassing. And the fact that MLB doesn't see it as anything short of embarrassing just shows how the lack of self-awareness that they have.
There's, I think the real issue is that nobody's in there representing the fans.
Yeah.
The most important thing doesn't have representation in all this, right? The players have representation, the owners have representation. There's nobody in there representing the people who pay the tickets, and that you would think that, if all three were represented, the fans would be represented and have the most power.
Yeah.
They would be able to just dictate stuff because the fans are what makes it great.
Yeah.
I mean, our love for it is what drives it.
Yeah. It is what drives it. And I don't think the MLB respects that anymore. And, frankly, what I wouldn't want to see any possible negative repercussions that could be thrown at us for this. But if this starts to go into games and games start to be lost as a result of it, when MLB says, hey guys, we're back, come to our opening day, I wish that no one would show up. And they would have to play in an empty stadium again for a day, and whatever revenue they lost, however they thought, then we can show up the next day. And I would just wish that they could experience that and just say, hey, like, you want to just throw us around like you can't do anything to us? Okay, we'll just show you what we can do.
Yeah,
I don't know. And then if maybe they have to sell tickets for like a fraction of what they do to try to get people in the stadium. I don't know.
There's so many things that they should do.
Obviously Joel would never happen. I'm just saying.
No, well, no. Why can't we? Why can't the fans at least do something along those lines? Why can't? I don't know, man. If they have any recollection of history, they know that the last strike took.
So
We
many
went from
fans.
31,000 to 20,000.
Mhm.
The third of the fan base did not show up until the McGuire and Sosa made the game exciting, and Cal Ripken did the consecutive games. Like, it took a lot of fan service to get the fans to. I don't know if they ever came back the same,
Yeah,
but
no,
they did. They came back, but I don't know if it was ever the same. They always
no.
and then black guys just don't seem to go away for baseball.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is, but like, baseball scandals are usually on the field, and like every other sports scandals are like personal scandals. Baseball doesn't have as many, I think. Like, don't get me wrong, there are a few like Ozuna
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
yeah. There are
But
personal scandals,
but you don't really have, as like, there's so many personal scandals in football, like
oh yeah.
gun violence and basketball, and hockey deals with like CTE and like all the guys who have died really young from drug abuse coming out of the game. And they deal with all these, like a gambling scandal, the what was the recent one that the NHL was dealing with? Oh yeah, like Evander Kane stopped
Yeah.
using his like his COVID passport, and no, they Ambien. They were prescribing tons of sleeping medication for players, and they were like, big huge drug, like nasty issues. And baseball's issues are like, we want to win more, we want to play better, we like all the scandals on the field, like steroids and trash can banging and foreign substance a little bit, but like people like that black guy never leaves the game, and people like to bring it up, and we're like, yeah, but these are all scandals. So like competitive scandals, like our competitive juices are so full that we just got to do whatever it
we
takes
just
to
have
win.
to do it. Yeah, we just have to do it. Yeah. No,
And that's,
I mean,
like, you can understand with that kind of stuff, but then comes the strikes and the lockouts and this nonsense that just.
I mean, as you were saying, it took massive amounts of cheating to, garner at least some of those fans to come back and watch games, which it just shows that, there was a massive amount of trust lost between the fans and the players after 94. And it was like, all right, if you don't want to show us that respect and come together and figure something out, and you'd rather, lose a World Series, take away a championship from a team that could potentially, win their first one, like the 94 Expos that were really heavily favored at the time.
Killed the franchise.
Yeah, it did. If the Expos win if the Expos win the World Series, we probably still have baseball in Montreal.
Don't even need to win the World Series. Just need to have a Seattle Mariners 95 moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they rally, they beat the Yankees in the wild card. They didn't need to win the World Series. They built a new stadium for them. The potential of what this team could do made everybody, rise for the Mariners. Mariners have not won anything. They had one good year in 2001. Last year they were not too bad with a terrible run differential. They never won anything.
No.
But that one playoff run in 95 saved that team. Yeah. And that would have done it for the Expos in 94.
Yeah. It really makes you think, had that not happened, a franchise could still be in a city. Like, it's crazy to think of the implications. But I think that kind of covers what we have in terms of lockout news. The final thing I wanted to touch with you in baseball news on was something that while I've talked with you about foreign substance on the show before, one of the things that I've also had time to talk with you about on here is your idea for strategy to improve the game of baseball. And that's something that you've always liked to throw around, and something that you've always had, whether I disagree with them or agree with them. There have always been ideas that you've had, whether it be softening the first base bag so guys don't blow out their kneecaps and have another Manny Machado incident, or just other ideas in general. One of the things that you've been talking about recently is, modifying the way that we do the outfield shift. I'll let you kind of take it from there on that, though, to give your thoughts, and then I'll come back in.
Well, when the infield shift, the Williams shift, bringing everybody over to when a lefty's up at the plate and you shift all of your infielders over to the other side of second base, to the first base side of second base. Obviously, that's done to kind of counteract the fact lefty likes to pull against a righty, and the ball's usually going to go into right field, right? And so, that's there's now a righty shift when you got righty pull hitters, and you'll move the second baseman over to the third base side of shortstop, and you overload one side, because nowadays hitters are 65 to 75% either hitting the ball to 70 center field or pulling the ball. 75-80% of the time, usually the ball is going in that direction, and the balls that go to the opposite field are usually weakly hit, because hitters aren't really designing their swings to turn around and kind of hit the ball to the opposite field. We're a lot more pull happy than they've ever been. So I guess my concept was to, instead of the idea of having 3 solid fielders, it was the idea of having 2 solid fielders and really letting one spot be the ultimate like hitting spot in the outfield. And you just rotate your left fielder and your right fielder depending on if you have a lefty or righty at the plate. You get 2 solid fielders. They're always playing pull, and then that weak fielder is going opposite field. And so for a guy like Nick Castellanos, Eddie Rosario, Jorge Soler, guys who kind of make a mess of outfield plays, pretty often, instead of trying to make them better, you just drastically cut down the amount of times that they play the ball. And then you take a negative 20 DRS and you make it 10.
Yeah.
And then you make that bat that much more productive, because it doesn't come with such a negative on the defensive side.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much the general idea.
Yeah. And I was, when I originally heard you kind of talking about it, I was a little bit confused by it, but then I remember that I was on a team that actually did this back in the day. I mentioned you before the show. When you're growing up, you can have your varsity baseball team or your AAU baseball teams. Those kids have played since they were around 5 or so years old, and they have a general understanding of the game. Most of them are fairly competent at this point in time, and usually can handle the position they're playing. But then you have town league, at least around here. I don't know if you guys had your town league or anything like that, but no. So yeah, the difference between your town league, which was like your Babe Ruth kind of league or anything like that, was that, all right, like in your town league, it could be any collection of kids. It could be kids that were on the varsity team, maybe kids that didn't make the varsity team, really from any age. There were after Little League, you would go on to, the Big Diamond, and you could just play guys from other towns and it wouldn't count for a school championship. It was just literally for the fun of the game, but you could win a Babe Ruth championship for guys in your district and your region. And that's how you won. And it sometimes you could have some really stacked teams. I mean, I was on a team one time that we just literally won every game we played, and we just like demolished the entire competition because we had the entire JV team as our team, and we'd face kids that were like in 6th grade and just demolish people. It was not even fair. And then other times, like, you'd be on teams that were terrible, and you'd have, like, we had this one kid that he amazing kid. His name's Tyler Corbett. But he didn't play baseball. The last time he did was on the small diamond. He ended up saying, "Hey, I want to play baseball again. I want to come out and I want to, get on the diamond again, just because I'm done with my football season. I want to enjoy myself." And the only hitting advice that he had for himself was see ball, hit ball. And that was the only thing that he had. And he was a decent enough outfielder. And like, it was like, all right, like, he can do this thing. And it was like, all right, let's do this. And it was just kind of a general fun vibe that you could have out there. Like, there was really no stress with it most of the time. And I remember one year we're doing this, and my dad was the coach just that year. And like I was always traditionally outfielder because I was fast and I had, decent defensive skills. And I was playing, left, and we had this other kid that really wasn't competent in right field. It wasn't that kid Tyler, it was a different kid. And my dad ends up saying to me, "Hey, depending on the pull of the hitter, we're just gonna have to have you shift between left and right because this guy just will not be good for today. So we need you to kind of go back and forth." So I was like, all right. So whenever a lefty came up, he was like, "Brian," and I just would have to just sprint to the other outfield because I was trying to not take up as much time as possible. And just every time the hitter switched, you were just running back and forth. And it honestly, it worked. It did not work. So I'd have to say it has its potential to actually kind of be something. I'm surprised that it isn't used more, but I think that MLB teams are that they see these guys and they end up saying, "Oh, well, he's a major league outfielder. He should be able to cover a spot." When in reality, most of these guys can't cover their spots. That's just the fact of it. A lot of these guys that have these terrible defensive ratings, they're in there for their bat.
Yeah, it's true. And so instead of trying to make it better, just cut down on how bad it can be.
Yeah,
It just seems to make sense to me, right? And I'm not saying every team has to do this, but it's a move that I would definitely think about if I'm a medium range team. I definitely I need a big bat. Oh God, bringing this guy in isn't going to make my outfield any better. Oh, he plays right field or he plays well. It doesn't matter which one, but like you why not? You just shift. You just if it doesn't seem like a big deal to me because we take third baseman and we move them out into short right field anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're making that move, it's the same. It's relatively the same distance of a
And I mean, if pitchers are taking a minute anyways to get themselves ready on the mound, like you have enough time to get between the outfield. It seems like a long jog, but when pitchers are getting themselves ready, you have enough time to get there and get set.
I think so.
It's not the most difficult thing. You can do it. So, I mean, I'm surprised that it isn't looked at more, but I think that concludes what we have in MLB news. So, one of the last things that I want to talk about with you on the show today, Kami, is obviously we obviously love the game of baseball, but I also know you're a big hockey guy. So I did want to get you on the show. We talked about it at the opening at the opening part of this hour. We said that you'd be excited to go and watch the Edmonton Oilers again. One of the things that has now become a breaking NHL story within like the last couple days or so is that due to a COVID outbreak across the NHL is basically just saying, "Hey, peace out. We're going on a holiday break." And they will be on holiday break now until the 26th of December. So what are your thoughts on this? And I mean, I'll chime in afterwards, but the fact that NHL is just basically just pulling the plug for like this next week and saying, "Hey, we're just gonna jump ship and hope for the best." What are your thoughts that NHL is going with this?
Well, I know that a lot of teams have really been hit hard, like Boston.
Yeah,
I know you guys have lost Marchand and Bergeron.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's huge.
That's our team.
Yeah. Barzal is down in New York. All of Calgary has been hit by it. So yeah, and it's like baseball had a couple like hiccups over the course of the year. Like maybe can't even remember if games were at any point canceled or postponed.
I can't really remember if they were. It was maybe towards the beginning of the year before the vaccines were out and everything. But I think
the Yankees had it late. I remember the Yankees had a bunch of COVID issues late, and they never stopped playing.
I don't think they did. No.
So
I think once the vaccine was out there, everyone kind of like there were no delays. There may have been a delay at the start of the season. I think the Nationals, I thought maybe had a delay, but I can't remember. That might have been 2020 though.
Yeah, like hockey is a place where it's gonna spread because the way that guys just grab their water bottles and just smush their face and spit all over each other and spit all over the ice. It's like the ice is a petri dish.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's just guys they drink half the water and then half of it just swishes through their mouth and then hits the ground in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect place for it to spread. I think of a basketball game, and it's not like take off my helmet, spray everything. They almost give themselves a car wash when they come off the ice in hockey. And you don't have that, like, maybe a little bit in football, but it's just in hockey. It's
just disgusting.
Yeah, it is. It really is. There's just a lot of spitting going on, and you can see how it happens in the locker room. You can see how in practice it would spread. You can just see how hockey is probably the worst place for it, because it's just, you're inside a cold arena, and it just seems like that would be a nesting place for this. So
yeah, I mean, I can definitely tell that there has been COVID issues across all the major four sports as recently. Well, not baseball, because they've decided to stop talking with one another. But across the other three, I mean, the NFL is having their own issues. The NBA is literally just hiring anyone on the spot to play for them. I saw that just before coming on air, the Celtics ended up signing Joe Johnson to a 10-day contract. I don't know how much you know about him, but he hasn't played in the league since the 2017-2018 season. And like, he's 40 years old now. They just said, "Hey, Joe, we just need you to come back and just get us through this thing." I'm like, that's amazing. Like, I hope Ray Allen comes out of retirement and breaks the 3-point record that Steph Curry just passed him on. I mean, I hope with everything going on in the NBA, I hope that you just see some craziness. Kevin Garnett comes back. All these guys just start to make a return because of all this desperation. I'd love to see it.
It's like World War II and all the one-armed baseball player. He hit with one arm. He only had one arm, and
it's what you had to do.
Yeah, they had to make the game work. So
yeah. So they found anyone they could. That's kind of what's happening in the NBA right now with they're just bringing anyone back. I love it. It's actually amazing to see. But I mean, maybe not under the circumstances, but it is kind of entertaining to see some of the guys that haven't played in 4 years just get the call. And it's just like, wait, you want me to play in the NBA again? I never thought I'd see the day. Let's go. So, I mean, I find that to be entertaining, but the NHL, it's interesting because I don't know if this is going to set a precedent and other leagues are going to go on hiatuses. Maybe the NFL decides to postpone part of the playoffs. I hope that they don't do something like this. And I hope that, because the NFL, for the most part, they had to reschedule games, but for the most part, they've just played through. So I hope that they do just continue to do this, because if they have to start skipping games and, trying to have to, rejuggle weeks, it's just going to be a mess. So I really hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. I think hockey, if it starts back up, it should be okay, because usually there is a break around Christmas time, whether it's the Olympics.
Yeah, they usually have a mid-season break anyways, hockey, right?
Yeah. And World Juniors is usually around that time, so they some teams will be sending their 19-year-olds that are just on the cusp of being good enough, and they're like, we'll send you down to the juniors. So but I don't know. Hopefully it's back up again. There hasn't been a full NHL season in 3 seasons. Like, the last 2 seasons were shortened, so didn't stop Connor McDavid from getting 100 points, but
still that's still insane. I hope that they are able to get back and going sooner rather than later. I'd love to see some playoff hockey, because that's when I actually will tune in and I'll watch some hockey, because I don't know what it is. I love watching a hockey. Here are my situations for watching a hockey game. I love watching it live. I will see any level of hockey live just because it is amazing to watch live. And then playoff hockey is amazing. Regular season hockey, I mean, you can talk. If it's on TV, then I'll be interested, but I'm never going to be like, oh, the Bees game is on. Like, that's always been me, just because I'll watch it and I'll be like, oh my God, what are the stakes? And it's like nothing. They're playing Edmonton tomorrow. I'm like, oh. like with baseball, at least you have a series, and it's like, you split the series, or you did something in the series. NFL, it's like, oh well, if you don't win this game, there's a chance that affects your playoff implications, like just based on this 1 out of 17 games. With NHL, and NBA too, like that, like it affects the NBA, because I'm like, oh, what is this going to do for the rest of the series? It's like nothing. Like, they're done. I'm like, oh, like that's the thing. When these guys only play like once outside of the NFL, I just see it as like, oh, like, okay, like when are they going to meet again? Like, what's the deal? Oh, 3 months down the line, fun.
Yeah, it's funny how there's
That's why I like playoff hockey. But yeah,
in a sport like hockey, you think that the rivalries would be a lot more heated, a
yeah,
lot more fiery, but they play the games and they have nothing bad to say about the other team, and you're like, come on, they hate on each other a little bit. Call
yeah.
like do
Just
something. Get
do something. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm that is one of the things. I mean, and that's why I like watching playoff hockey, because these guys are playing in 5 to 7 game series. So
Mhm.
so they're seeing the
It's a
same
different
guys every.
sport. Playoff hockey
Absolutely.
to regular season hockey. It is. It's just
Absolutely. And it's just really entertaining to watch. Uh I I want to get more into it because whenever I watch hockey and I hear people talk about the history of hockey, I just kind of feel like the relative that doesn't understand like the family drama, like when you're at like some event and it's just like, oh, like what's going down, like I have no idea what's happening. Like I remember I was in Toronto back in 2018, or yeah, I think it was 2017, 2018, around then. And I went to a Blue Jays game, and when you're in Toronto, I also went to the Hockey Hall of Fame. So I was checking it out. And when you're there, they have like this kind of like film video thing talking about the history of the game. And like I'm watching it on TV, and it's like these kids like messing around on the ice, like having fun, and it's just like going, this is our game, this is what we grew up doing. And I'm just like, like you kind of just feel like left out. You're just like, yeah, man, but it's not for me. Like it's like I'll watch the Bruins, but like when it's saying this is our game, I'm like, yeah, but it isn't for me.
yeah. I'm the same. Like I'm up here doing baseball content. I'm
Yeah.
I'm the I'm the I'm the outcast.
Mhm.
Nobody cares. Like nobody.
Yeah.
I'm down in the States. People kind of know who I am. Down up here, that could care less. I try to
That's
go to
amazing.
my local like newspaper and be like, I was like, hey, do you guys want to cover my like page and how I kind of like did stuff with foreign substance? That was kind of like a thing, and now there's this like foreign substance check, and every time that happens, I like kind of that's my part of the game right there, that I have a little part of that, and then they're like, we don't care. They don't care one bit.
Yeah.
If it's not Oilers, they just don't care. Like
Fair
it's
enough.
Major League Baseball. Like you get 20 million people to show up attendance for hockey. Like 20 million people go to
Oh
a
yeah.
professional hockey games. 120 million people go to baseball. It's just like, hey, that's
No, it's
not
huge.
here.
But no, I think, and it's not that I don't care. Like I love watching the Bruins whenever they're in the playoffs
Mhm.
and doing their thing. I'm diehard for the Bruins, and I hope they stomp anyone in their way. That's the way I look at it. But then it's like whenever you're watching something and it's saying like, oh, this is our history, this is what we're all about, and it's not your history. It's like it feels like it feels just very awkward, and it's like I, if you ended up going to like if like the National Golf like Museum, I don't know if they have one, or like the National Wrestling Museum, and they're saying we've been doing this thing since childhood. I'd be like, I haven't. I haven't been doing this since childhood. I just watch on TV sometimes.
Yeah, like at least baseball is much more of a pastime and just some, like
And
it's
obviously up in Canada, hockey has much more of roots up there. There are like a much more greater ties. And even in Boston, there are ties too. But yeah.
and it's funny because in Toronto, it's like if there's a list of like hated fan bases, it's Toronto's like the most hated hockey fan base. They just hate everybody in Canada hates Toronto. I assume it's
Oh
similar
yeah.
down because just like you haven't won one in 50, 60 years.
They're the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Where
Yeah.
the Cowboys fans will roam around just talking about, oh, we're America's team, we're this, but you haven't won in 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
It's like, okay. And I mean with the Maple Leafs, it's even like worse, right? Like it's
Oh
like
yeah,
how
60s,
yeah,
1960s since they
but
won.
they're still rolling around like we're the staple, we're the original six, we're all that. It's like, no, you're not.
No, you're not. You're just you're not. You're not. And Even now, they put so much like up here. You have CBC, and every single Saturday night when they do Hockey Night in Canada, it's literally what you gather around the TV for on Saturday night.
Yeah.
97% chance it's a Leafs game. No matter where they are in the standings, no matter what's going on. Any other game could be on. 97% chance they're covering the Leafs game. And for a very, very long time, that was not the team they'd be covering. Even now with Austin Matthews, and I'm not a big Austin Matthews guy. I got Connor McDavid.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But nah, so obviously there's it'll be interesting to see what the NHL does, but Kami, we are officially now down to the wire, which means that we're going to wrap up what we talked about in this episode, and then we will send you guys on your way. Obviously, we welcome back in Mr. Joel LaFlamme, aka Hey Kami, to the show to talk about all the latest baseball and hockey headlines. In baseball news, we talked about the two different baseballs that have kind of, caused a rift in the game and have sparked their own little scandal themselves outside of foreign substance. Going off of that, we talked about the MLB lockdown and the effects that has had. Also, some moves that have been able to happen during the lockdown, such as Justin Verlander's contract getting finalized with the Houston Astros and Buck Showalter now becoming the manager of the New York Mets for the 2022 season. And we talked about shifting outfielders depending on which the pull side of whichever hitter is at the plate, which frankly, I don't understand how this isn't being done already. But like most MLB teams, selfishness and, thinking they know all is probably the main reason for that. And finally, in NHL news, we talked about hockey going on holiday break a little bit early than many people would think. And we just talked about our personal NHL experiences in general. But Kami, it was amazing having you on the show, man. Glad to have you here, dude.
Thanks so much, Brian. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. Before I shout my stuff out, I'll let you do that, obviously, because that's what we do.
Yeah. For those out there, you guys can check me out at hey_Kami at TikTok. That's where most of my videos are. You can also look up Hey Kami on YouTube, but it's mostly just runoff from my TikTok page. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Absolutely, man. And listen, if you guys are not following Down to the Wire at this point, we're available everywhere you guys can find. We're available on all streaming services, such as Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, etc. But the main hub and place you can reach us through is our Instagram. You can follow that at down.to_the_wire. Again, guys, at down.to_the_wire on Instagram for any updates or little clips surrounding the show. But thank you guys so much for watching. And from Down to the Wire, I'm Brian Costa.
I'm Hey Kami, Joel LaFlamme.
And we hope that you guys have an amazing day. Take care. Peace out.